The morning mist curled low over the creek, thick enough to blur the far bank into watercolor smudges of green and gray. It had always been my favorite view, the bridge stretching across Hollow Creek, sturdy but humble, built with my own 2 hands and a borrowed nail gun. 20 years ago, my son and I spent an entire summer sanding, staining, and cursing through that project. We'd celebrated the final plank with cold root beer and mosquito bites. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Every creak in the boards had a story, and every nail knew the weight of the work we'd poured into it. That morning, though, something was wrong. I heard voices, too many of them, and the whine of small engines. I stepped out onto the porch, coffee mug warming my hand, and nearly dropped it. There they were, a caravan of golf carts rolling across my bridge like ants on a picnic blanket. Marlene Wilkes led the charge, the self-appointed queen of our HOA, clipboard clutched like a royal decree. Behind her came a trail of neighbors hauling bags of mulch, watering cans, and whatever else their community garden demanded. "Marlene," I shouted, crossing the yard fast enough to slosh coffee over my knuckles, "what the hell are you doing?" She turned, beaming as if she'd just been waiting for me to come witness her good deed. "Morning, George," she called out. "Isn't it wonderful? We finally found a direct route to the garden plot. Saves everyone 15 minutes. I stopped at the edge of the bridge, heart thudding. The weight of those carts made the boards groan underfoot. The bridge wasn't built for that kind of use, certainly not for traffic. "Wonderful, you're driving on my property. This bridge isn't public." "Oh, George," she said, smiling in that syrupy way she used when she was about to explain how wrong you were. "Technically, it's part of the neighborhood easement. It connects to the community trail, doesn't it?" "No," I said flatly. "It connects my driveway to the main road. That's it. The trail ends 50 yards back." Marlene gave a little shrug. "It benefits everyone. You can't just keep something so useful all to yourself. I built it myself," I reminded her, voice tightening. "Paid for every board, every nail, every damn permit. You don't get to vote my property into being public." ChatGPT said, "The courtroom smelled faintly of old carpet and lemon cleaner, the kind of scent that clings to every county building no matter how many times they mop the floors." I sat at the defendant's table, palms flat on the cool surface, watching the sunlight slant through the high windows. Across the aisle, Marlene Wilkes perched like a porcelain bird, hands folded neatly over a stack of papers. She'd dressed for the occasion, powder, blue blazer, pearls, and a smile that could curdle milk. Her lawyer, a slick man in a navy suit, leaned close to whisper something. She nodded, chin high, as if she were preparing to accept a trophy instead of trying to take money from her neighbor. The whole situation felt absurd. A small town HOA suing a man for the collapse of his own bridge, but there we were. When the bailiff called the case, the shuffle of papers and low murmurs filled the room. The judge entered, gray-haired, weary, looking with the kind of eyes that had seen too many petty disputes dressed up as legal crises. He took his seat, adjusted his glasses, and glanced at the docket. Case 22-143, Hollow Creek Homeowners Association versus George Rains, he said. His tone suggested he already regretted it. "Parties ready for the plaintiff, Your Honor," said Marlene's lawyer. "Ready for the defendant," I answered. The judge nodded and motioned for the plaintiff to begin. The lawyer rose, buttoning his jacket with unnecessary flair. "Your Honor, the HOA is seeking damages for the destruction of community infrastructure and associated distress caused by Mr. Rains's negligence in maintaining a shared structure." I nearly laughed out loud. Shared structure, that phrase had haunted me for weeks. He continued, voice dripping with practiced authority. The bridge in question provided essential access to the community garden, a space enjoyed by dozens of residents. Mr. Rains was aware that his bridge served this purpose and yet failed to maintain it safely. As a result, the structure collapsed, posing a danger to residents and causing property damage to several vehicles. I couldn't stay quiet. Your Honor, that's not true. They were trespassing. I told them, Mr. Rains. The judge interrupted gently. You'll have your turn. Please let counsel finish. I bit my tongue and sat back, the edge of frustration simmering just beneath my ribs. The lawyer smiled, the kind of smile that says he's enjoying this more than he should. The HOA made every effort to work with Mr. Rains to ensure the bridge was maintained, but he refused cooperation. We have emails, meeting notes, and witness statements confirming that the bridge had been in community use for years without issue until his neglect caused this disaster. Disaster? I muttered. It's a broken bridge, not a hurricane. He ignored me and took his seat with an air of self-satisfaction. The judge turned to me. Mr. Rains, your response? I stood, my knees stiff but steady. I'd spent the last month preparing for this, combing through every document, every photo, every scrap of proof I had. I slid a thick folder across the table toward the clerk. Your Honor, I began, that bridge is not and has never been community property. It sits entirely within the boundaries of my parcel. I built it myself in 2005 with permits issued by the county. Here's the deed, the property survey, and the original permit. The judge flipped through the papers, his brow furrowing. Furthermore, I continued, I sent the HOA 3 certified letters warning them to stop using it. I told them it wasn't designed for heavy traffic and that they were crossing without permission. They ignored every warning. Then, after overloading it with trucks and equipment, it collapsed, and now they're suing me for the mess they caused. I handed over photographs, the cracked boards, the broken supports, the tire tracks in the mud. I'd even printed the delivery receipts for my certified letters. The judge looked up, expression unreadable. Did you receive these letters, Mrs. Wilkes? Marlene shifted in her seat, her smile faltering. Well, yes, but we believed Mr. Rains was simply mistaken about the legal standing of the bridge. It was being used by residents for years without objection. That constitutes implied community access. Implied? I said, incredulous. I objected constantly. You just didn't care. Her lawyer jumped in. Your Honor, my client acted in the best interest of the community. The bridge was functionally part of neighborhood infrastructure, regardless of technical boundaries. The judge leaned back, tapping a pen on his desk. Regardless of technical boundaries, he repeated slowly, meaning, regardless of ownership. The lawyer hesitated. We believe ownership, in this case, is secondary to stop, the judge said sharply. This isn't a philosophy class, counselor. Either it's on HOA property or it isn't. I almost smiled. He turned back to me. Mr. Rains, do you have evidence showing the bridge's location relative to the property line? Yes, sir. I pulled out the survey map and pointed to the highlighted section. The creek forms the natural border. The bridge starts and ends entirely on my land. There's no easement, no shared boundary, and no recorded right of way. The judge examined the map for a long moment. Then he looked at Marlene. Mrs. Wilkes, did your HOA obtain written permission from Mr. Rains to use this bridge? She hesitated again, dabbing at imaginary sweat with a tissue. No, but everyone used it. It was understood. The judge sighed. So, no permission. She tried to recover. We just wanted to make the garden accessible. It was for the good of the community. I leaned forward. And the community can build its own bridge next time. Her lawyer objected, claiming I was being combative. The judge waved him off. Sit down, counselor. For a few seconds, the only sound in the courtroom was the ticking of the old clock above the door. The judge set down his pen, clasped his hands, and looked directly at Marlene. Mrs. Wilkes, I've presided over a lot of disputes between neighbors. Usually, they're about fences or tree branches or loud music. But I've never seen an HOA attempt to commandeer private property, destroy it, and then sue the owner for the damage. This is, he paused, searching for the word, beyond reason. Marlene's face went pale. Her lawyer started to speak, but the judge cut him off with a raised hand. Case dismissed, he said firmly. And Mrs. Wilkes, I strongly advise your board to consult actual property law before making decisions in the future. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down with a single, satisfying crack. For a moment, I just sat there, stunned. Then the tension drained out of me all at once. I gathered my papers, trying not to grin too broadly. As I walked past Marlene, she refused to look at me, staring fixedly at her clipboard like it could still save her. Outside, the autumn air hit my face like a blessing. The courthouse steps gleamed in the sunlight, and for the first time in months I could breathe easy. A local reporter waiting by the steps called out, "Mr. Raines, any comment on the case?" I chuckled. "Yeah, don't trespass where you don't belong." By the time I got home, the creek was calm again. The broken bridge still lay in the water, half submerged but quiet now, like it had finally gotten the rest it deserved. I stood there for a long time, watching the light dance on the surface. Then I went to the shed, pulled out a new piece of plywood, and painted the words in bold black letters. She turned to one of the neighbors, ignoring me completely. "Could you remind the landscapers to unload by the garden fence, please? We'll be setting up the compost bins next week." I could feel the vein in my temple twitching. "You can't do that. This bridge isn't rated for heavy loads. If it breaks, it's on you." "Oh, don't be dramatic, George. It's a bridge, not a glass coffee table." I wanted to argue more, but what was the point? I knew how the HOA operated. They loved to blur boundaries until ownership was just a technicality. I stomped back to my porch, seething, and fired off a letter that same day. Certified mail, signature required. It said, in no uncertain terms, that they were trespassing, that the bridge was privately owned, not an HOA-maintained structure, that they were to stop using it immediately. They ignored it. A week later, trucks were crossing. Trucks, not carts. I came home one afternoon to find a landscaping crew dumping pallets of fertilizer across the planks, the whole bridge creaking like an old ship in a storm. The supports shuddered under the weight. I ran out again, waving my arms like a lunatic. "You're going to collapse it," I shouted. One of the workers, a kid barely 20, shrugged. "The HOA said it was fine. The HOA doesn't own it." He just looked at me, confused, like I was arguing with a stop sign. By then, I could see cracks starting to form along the side rails, places where the nails had begun to loosen. I took photos of everything, dozens of them, and sent 2 more letters, no response. When I went to the HOA meeting to confront them in person, Marlene smiled through her lipstick and said, "George, we received your letters, but the board has determined that your bridge constitutes a shared resource under the community covenant." "There's no such clause in the covenant," I said. She waved her hand like a magician. "Well, there will be. We're drafting an amendment." That was it. That was when I knew they'd lost their minds. I stormed out before I said something that would get me fined, or worse. For the next few weeks, I watched from my porch as the parade continued. Morning joggers, parents with strollers, teenagers on bikes. Then came more trucks, more gardeners, more noise. Every plank moaned under the weight, and I could almost feel the bridge protesting. I started to stay up late just to keep an eye on it, half expecting it to crumble any night. And then, one night in early June, it did. It was around 2 in the morning when I heard the crack. Not a small one, a deep, violent sound that ripped through the night air like thunder tearing in half. Then a splash, loud and final. I bolted out of bed, flashlight in hand, and ran barefoot through the yard. The grass was slick with dew, and the beam of light danced wildly as I reached the creek. Half the bridge was gone. The center section had collapsed completely, the boards split and hanging crooked over the rushing water. One of the support beams had snapped clean through, jagged edges jutting up like broken bones. I stood there in stunned silence, the flashlight trembling in my hand. There were no trucks, no people, thank God, but the wreckage told the story. Tire marks in the mud, fresh ones. Someone had been there late at night, hauling something heavy. They'd crossed without permission again, and this time the bridge had given up. I spent the rest of the night roping off the area with yellow caution tape I found in the garage. By dawn, I had a sign up, "Private property do not cross." I thought that would be the end of it, a lesson learned the hard way. But the next morning, I opened my front door and found a bright orange envelope taped to it. It was from the HOA, a formal notice of intent to sue. They claimed my failure to maintain a shared structure had caused damage to community property and created a safety hazard. They wanted me to pay for the repairs, the cleanup, and unbelievably emotional distress. I stood there on my porch, letter in hand, watching the mist burn off the creek. The bridge lay in ruins, half submerged in the water I'd fished in as a kid. The same people who'd stolen its use now wanted to make me pay for losing it. The absurdity hit me so hard I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I folded the letter neatly, slid it back into the envelope, and went inside. I poured myself another cup of coffee, stared out the window at the wreckage, and muttered, "Fine. You want a fight, Marlene. You've got one." And just like that, my quiet life by Hollow Creek turned into a war zone.